The road seemed endless beneath Lena's aching feet. All day long she had walked with nothing but the cold wind at her back and the weight of unanswered prayers on her shoulders. Her jacket, thin and frayed at the cuffs, barely kept out the chill that settled deep in her bones. She kept her eyes on the fading horizon, whispering to herself, "Just a little farther, don't stop now." Weeks of searching had drained her strength. Every town she passed through had met her with polite smiles that didn't reach the eyes, doors that closed too quickly, and a repeated phrase she now dreaded: "Sorry, we're not hiring." Some didn't bother giving reasons. They simply turned away, leaving her with the heavy silence that said more than rejection ever could. Lena had not always lived like this. Once, she had a steady job, a small apartment, and a sense of direction. But life had a cruel way of unraveling when hardship arrived all at once. A layoff, a landlord who wouldn't wait, bills that didn't care about bad luck. She lost her apartment, then her savings, then the last bit of certainty she had left. Now all she had was a backpack filled with worn clothes, a few dollars, and stubborn determination. People underestimated that, her determination. Even when her voice trembled, even when loneliness tried to choke her spirit, she kept moving. The rain began suddenly, sharp, biting drops that soaked her hair and ran down the back of her collar. The sky darkened, folding itself into heavy gray clouds. She looked around desperately for shelter, but the highway stretched out empty on both sides. Only the wind answered her. She quickened her pace. Her shoes slapped against wet gravel, each step heavier than the last. Her stomach growled. She couldn't remember the last real meal she'd had. The cold seeped into her fingers until they felt stiff and useless. She clutched her backpack tighter, as if it were a lifeline. Then, through the curtain of rain, she saw it. A porch light, glowing faintly in the distance. Her breath caught. She wasn't imagining it. There was a building up ahead. A ranch house, isolated and quiet, surrounded by stretching fields and an old wooden fence that leaned with age. A wide barn stood beside it, and beyond that, rolling darkness where the land disappeared. Her legs wanted to collapse with relief, but she forced herself to keep walking. By the time she reached the gate, her clothes were drenched, her hair plastered to her forehead. She hesitated. What if the person inside wasn't welcoming? What if they turned her away like everyone else? But the storm was turning fierce, and she didn't have the strength to wander any farther. Gathering every ounce of courage left in her, she pushed open the creaky gate and approached the porch. The sound of her wet shoes on the wooden boards felt loud in the quiet night. She lifted her trembling hand and knocked. For a long moment, nothing happened. The rain hammered the roof, and the wind rattled the old shutters. She was about to step back when the lock clicked. The door opened slowly. A tall rancher stood in the doorway, broad-shouldered, weather-worn, with eyes that had seen more than most people ever would. He looked surprised, even cautious, but not unkind. Lena swallowed hard. "No one wants to give me work," she whispered, voice raw. "I just need shelter." The rancher studied her face. Tired, soaked, but still holding a spark of quiet strength. Then, without speaking, he stepped aside and opened his door to her. Warmth wrapped around Lena the moment she stepped inside. The glow of the fireplace flickered across the room, casting soft shadows on the wooden walls. She stood still for a moment, letting the heat thaw her numb fingers. Water dripped from her clothes onto the floor, forming a small puddle at her feet. The rancher closed the door behind her with a quiet thud. "You're freezing," he said, his voice rough but steady. "Sit down before you fall down." He walked to a cabinet near the fireplace, pulled out a folded blanket, and handed it to her. Lena clutched it gratefully and wrapped it tightly around her shoulders. The soft fabric instantly made her chest tighten with emotion. Something as simple as kindness suddenly felt overwhelming. "You got a name?" he asked as he set a kettle on the stove. "Lena," she replied, barely above a whisper. He nodded. "I'm Holt." He didn't press her with questions. He didn't demand explanations. He simply moved around the kitchen, lighting another lantern, giving the space a warmer glow. Lena watched him quietly. He was a man shaped by long days under the sun, hands rough with work, boots worn from miles of dust and mud. Yet, despite his rugged appearance, his actions were slow, thoughtful. When he placed a steaming mug of tea in front of her, she hesitated before taking it, as if still unsure whether this moment was real. Holt noticed her trembling hands. "You look like you've been walking since last winter," he said. Lena let out a shaky breath, staring into the tea. "It feels like it," she murmured. "I've been trying, everywhere. Town to town, ranch to ranch. No one wanted to give me work. Some didn't even listen. I just kept going, hoping something would change." Holt leaned against the counter, arms crossed. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. Really listened, which felt like another gift she wasn't expecting. She continued, her voice breaking at the edges. "I didn't come here to cause trouble. I just needed a dry place to rest. I'll leave by morning if." "You're not going anywhere tonight," Holt said firmly, cutting her off. "Storm's getting ugly out there." As if on cue, thunder rumbled in the distance, shaking the windows. Lena's shoulders slumped with relief she hadn't allowed herself to feel earlier. Holt scratched his beard thoughtfully before speaking again. "Look, this ranch ain't much. It's mostly me and an old dog somewhere sleepin' under the stairs. But the work's constant, and an extra pair of hands wouldn't hurt." Lena looked up, hope flickering in her eyes. "Are you saying I could work here?" "If you want to," he replied. "Fences need mendin', horses need feedin'. And I could use someone who's not afraid of a long day." "I'm not afraid," she said quickly, too quickly. Then softer, "I'll work hard. I mean it. I can tell," Holt said, giving her a small, approving nod. For the first time in months, Lena felt something inside her settle. Not completely, but enough. Enough to breathe without feeling like she was drowning. Holt gestured toward the hallway. "There's a spare room. It's simple, but it's warm. You can stay there tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure things out." Emotion tightened her chest again. "Thank you," she whispered. "Really? Thank you." Holt simply tipped his hat and turned away, pretending not to notice the tears she wiped from her cheeks. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, for the first time in a very long time, Lena felt she truly belonged somewhere.